Hello, and welcome to Playwright, an online interview series presented by Queen's Theatre at Home. You are listening to the audio description pre-show notes for the interview. Because the format is fairly simple and the talking is continuous, there will be no audio description during the interview itself. The video begins with a title screen. The Queen's Theatre logo fills up the left side of the screen. The logo resembles the letter Q. The circle of the letter Q is orange, and the rectangular tail is black. The text of the title screen reads, Playwright to Playwright with Rob Urbinati and special guest Nandita Shenoy. Originally recorded July 2nd. Technical production, Jay Rogers. The Queen's Theatre at Home text logo is in the lower right corner of the frame. The interview consists of close-ups of Nandita and Rob in large squares, filling a split screen with Rob on the left and Nandita on the right. At times, when Nandita is speaking, a close-up of her fills the screen. Rob is in his 60s, with close-cropped dark hair and a round face. Nandita is in her 40s, with olive skin, short brown hair pulled behind her ears, and big round eyes. Both are in their living rooms, visible from the shoulders up. Rob is wearing a black sweater, and Nandita is wearing a patterned blouse.
Hello, my name is Rob Urbinati, and I am Director of New Play Development at Queen's Theatre. Welcome to the third installment of one of our online series, Playwright to Playwright. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with one of my favorite playwrights. Let's meet her, Nandita Shenoy. Hi, Nandita.
Hi, Rob. I'm
nice
well. How are
to
you?
see you. I'm
Great
good.
to see you.
Where does this find you? Where are you at?
I am in my apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Excellent. Yes, I see some photos on your.
Yeah, you see that's my poster from my first production of Washer Dryer, and then next to it is the off-Broadway production poster as well.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to be talking about Washer and Dryer coming up. But first, I just wanted to ask you about yourself as a playwright, how you would characterize your writing. I think of you as sort of hip, smart, contemporary type of writer with a real commercial flair. Is that something you accept?
I do accept that characterization, Rob,
Cool.
Definitely. I think of myself as a writer of comedy generally, and what else would I say? Oh, and one time when I was in one of my writer's labs, one of my fellow writers, Jihei Park, said that my plays were classy yet subversive. And I really like that characterization of my plays as well. So I'm going with that.
Talk to me a little bit about subversive. What do you think is subversive about your writing? I'm intrigued by that.
Well, I think that, it's interesting that you say that my work has a commercial element to it, because I feel like I'm very much influenced by television and sitcom and comedy, which generally does tend to be very commercial. But I think that I put those elements in situations that you don't necessarily see them in, which I think is the subversive part. With Washer Dryer is a very classic farce and comedy in kind of the style of Neil Simon, but the lead characters were Asian, and there was only one white person in the play. It was a very multicultural cast. And I think that, unfortunately, having a multicultural cast can seem subversive in our current situation. So,
Nandita, I love Washer Dryer and Reunion, and we did readings of both of those plays at Queen's Theatre. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your experience of the readings at Queen's Theatre, particularly the post-show discussions.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love doing readings at Queen's Theatre, particularly because I think that when I have readings in Manhattan, generally readings are filled with my friends who know me, know my personal circumstances, and get my particular sense of humor. And what's great for me as a playwright, going to Queen's Theatre, you have cultivated a really excellent audience, but they're all people that I don't know personally. And so it's a really great litmus test for me to see whether the play works for people other than my friends. But also, what has been wonderful about the audience that you've cultivated is that you've cultivated this group of people who are both theater lovers, but also really invested in development and really interested and open to new ideas and thoughts and stories. They're always really open and accepting. At least that's been my experience. So it's been really, really meaningful and sometimes really moving to have those post show discussions with an audience of people who are generally very different from the circumstances that are in my plays, but to hear how they relate. For instance, in Reunion, the play is about a high school reunion and a group of classmates who are revisiting some of the perhaps unseemly things that may have happened during their high school years, and many of them were related to race. And it was really interesting to hear the audience respond to that and reflect on their own high school experiences and talk about how the play affected them and made them look at their own experiences in a different way. And that just really touched me because I think that's why I make theater, to expose a lot of different people to different experiences and maybe have them have empathy for experiences that are different than their own. So it's really been a great opportunity to be able to hear my plays with your audience.
Thank you. Yes, we're very proud of our civilians, but I also think it speaks to the universality in some ways of your plays, because obviously there's something very distinct about them and about your cultural perspective in these plays, but there's also something that reaches and touches all audiences. And that was a beautiful thing to experience with the readings of both of your plays at Queen's Theater. So thank you for bringing them out there. And as soon as we reopen our doors, we'll have another play by Nandita Shenoy out at Queen's Theater. I promise you that.
I love that. I love that. Thank you.
So given the sort of nature, the generally comic, but arguably subversive, and the popular appeal, I guess, of those plays, and I guess I want to say also their sort of generousness of spirit, which I really admire in your writing. I was shocked and startled to see that you had written a play called Rage Play. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I think it's funny that you're surprised by Rage Play. I will say that I think that my work has taken a distinctly different turn since the election, and I've let some. Maybe this is where the subversion comes out in terms of just other emotions other than happiness. Although I wouldn't say that all my other plays are happy. But anyway, Rage Play was actually inspired partially by the Aziz Ansari story that broke, I think, at the beginning of 2018, and also in response to the Me Too movement. And I wrote the play about the situation that is so common in our society of just gender-based harassment and abuse. And I think that when we talk about people like Harvey Weinstein, and even in the conversation around Aziz Ansari, it was like, oh, this is this really specific and unlikely situation that doesn't affect the whole of our culture, but it actually does. It's very prevalent through our whole society of how much just abuse that there is in our system. I think that we've seen a lot of that come out in our own theatrical community, of a lot of abusive practices that were happening behind the scenes at a lot of theaters. And it's something that's generally been kind of not spoken about or hidden. And so Rage Play was my response to all of that, which has been building for a long time. So that's kind of what that, but I will say it is still a comedy. It is a very dark comedy, but a comedy nonetheless.
Interesting. I was really looking forward to seeing it, and then came the pandemic. Do you know anything about the status of that production, Nandita?
Well, we canceled it because at the time of the pandemic, we thought we would just have to, cancel production and then move on with whatever programming was next, not really realizing that, you know, who knows? Who knows? So now it's kind of up in the air. Flux was really wonderful and did an online presentation of Rage Play, which was not a reading, but actually kind of presentation to showcase our production and all the work that had gone into it. So we did an evening that also we did some scenes, we read a couple of scenes, but we also went through the process with all the designers of how they came up with their particular designs, because we were halfway through the rehearsal process when we had to cancel. So, we had a pretty fully realized production. I don't think the set had started being built yet, but we were just on the verge and had started ordering materials and all of that kind of stuff. So to kind of honor that actual production, we did this online presentation one evening at the end of May, and I had really thought of it as an opportunity to say goodbye to the work that we had done, because it was really a shock to the system to be in rehearsal on Wednesday and then cancel on Thursday, and so that's how I thought about it. But after that reading, it filled me with hope. It made me feel like the play, the way people responded to the play made me feel like there's a life for this play whenever we can be together again. It's also a very interactive play and needs to be live.
That's fascinating. My heart goes out to you having a play canceled mid-rehearsal.
Yeah.
You talked about it being presented as a presentation as opposed to a virtual reading. Was
That's
that
right.
your decision or Flux's decision? How did that
It
come
was our decision together. I was really opposed to doing a virtual reading because the play is so interactive, and because the play is about a very sensitive subject matter. And in asking for that interaction, I think there's something about being in a room with other people that makes you feel somewhat responsible to the other people that are in your physical space. And so part of the interaction was a conversation. And I just didn't know that conversation would be able to be had in a productive way in an online forum. So I didn't want to really expose anyone to anything that might be uncomfortable or triggering, or expose any of our actors to unwanted comments that are we had been working on really hard about how to manage and facilitate a conversation in the room, but it's a totally different thing to do that online, and we weren't really prepared for that.
Sure. Staying on this somewhat serious theme, you mentioned that the play deals with issues of sexual abuse.
And just gender-based abuse in general, because to me, Harvey Weinstein didn't become Harvey Weinstein like overnight. He pushed his luck a little bit and a little bit and a little bit until he could do what we know he's done. And I think it's that little bit and little bit and little bit that we are all trained to look the other way from. And I think it's that little bit that we could actually stop someone from becoming Harvey Weinstein. And I think there's way more Harvey Weinsteins out there than anybody would like to acknowledge.
It's really intriguing for me to hear Nandita, specifically, I guess, in terms of how the play is interactive and is going to deal with these types of serious issues. But I'm going to wait to see it. I don't want you to reveal all about it, but I'm really intrigued by that. You had mentioned that the play was inspired by the election, or that you started to write it after the election?
No, the play itself was inspired. I started writing it right after the Aziz Ansari story broke, just because of the conversations that were happening around that. I mean, after Harvey Weinstein, the conversation was like, he's a monster, right? But like with Aziz Ansari, some people were like, I don't think he did anything wrong. And some people were like, why did he do that? I mean, there was a lot more nuance around it. And I felt like, oh, this is the conversation we should be having about what is okay and what is not okay. What is consent? What does consent look like? I think that those are conversations that we don't have. And that's why we get into such murky and terrible territory. So that's what the play attempts to address. It's not so much about, uh, you know, rape, or as like, what are the circumstances that allow rape to be so prevalent in our society?
And yet it's still a comedy, a dark
Yeah,
comedy.
a very, very dark comedy.
I can't wait to see it. Does it deal with cultural issues in any? I'm talking about issues of race and ethnicity specifically.
To a certain degree, I was very clear in my character descriptions that the women could be of any race, but that it was important to me that they not all be white, because I do think that a lot of conversations about women ends up being a conversation about white women, and the issues that women of color face are often complicated by race. So that's definitely addressed in the play, but it's not specific in the play.
If you remember, we did a series of plays at Queen's Theater that were all written by Asian writers, but it's part of the theater's policy, the executive director, Taryn Sacramone's policy, to not sort of announce or banner the series in any way. So we didn't. We just did 3 plays one spring. One of yours was included. They were all by Asian or South Asian writers. And I remember that you mentioned to me at that time that it was one of the first times, or the first time, that you hadn't been identified as an Asian writer, and you were pleased about that. Can you talk about that for us a bit?
Sure. First of all, I want to say I'm happy to be identified as either an Asian American writer or a female writer, because I am both of those things and I'm proud of my heritage and my background. That said, I think of myself as an American playwright. I don't think that my plays are particularly South Asian or particularly female. They are just about the human condition, in the same way that plays that white men write are about the human condition. And so it was really exciting to me to be just presented as a new playwright, a new American playwright, because I also think that's what I am. And I'm so rarely qualified in that way. And also, I think that being constantly qualified as an Asian American or a South Asian American or a woman creates this sense of having sort of a niche, or being only appealing to other people who have those same qualifiers. And I just don't think that's true, not about my work or really of anyone's, but I don't want to always be put in that box. And I was really grateful to Queen's Theater for letting me be in the bigger box.
That's great. Yeah. You've really just articulated Taryn's sort of mission statement on that. And I think you understand that writers do feel differently. So it's not an easy decision for the theater to make.
Yeah.
Some Black writers or disabled writers specifically want to be identified that way. It's an important part of their identity, and they feel it should be referenced. Other writers feel differently. So in terms of marketing and promoting reading series at Queen's Theater, it's something we grapple with, but there is this official policy that Taryn Sacramone has tasked us with, and where I'm glad that it worked for you. In fact, I think you said it to me in an email, I forget, but I forwarded it to Taryn and say, your thinking on this was really correct.
I think that's also really, it's great to do that in Queens, which is one of the most diverse places in the world. And because I think most Queens residents also think of themselves as Americans. So really, it made sense to me in the context why you do that. And I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. I wanted to ask you about your different disciplines in theater, because you're also an actress, an accomplished actress, a delightful stage presence and comedian. You appeared in one of the readings of your plays at Queen's Theater. I think that was by accident. I think some actor dropped out, if I remember.
No, actually, I think we were trying. No, we wanted to do that because I think that was actually my audition for my own play right before we went off Broadway, because we weren't sure if I should do it or not. But that reading sealed the deal.
I did not realize that. Well, congratulations. And I'm glad you had the opportunity to audition in front of our audiences. But I want you to speak a little bit about that, about being both an actor and a playwright, and how your being an actor informs your plays, if they do, if it does.
I think it does. I mean, I can't I don't think I can really articulate exactly how, but because I started as an actor and I think I learned play analysis mostly as an actor, I write plays that I think would be fun to act. I also think that because as an actor, I really love um, witty banter and I'm a fast talker. I think most of my characters end up being very witty and fast talking. So I think those things obviously affect me as a writer. And I hope that I offer uh, dialogue and circumstances that are easy to jump into and to sink your teeth into.
Been in a lot of writers groups and writers labs. Could you talk a bit about what you gain from those?
Yeah, so much. First of all, my process is to hear the play as I'm going along. And generally, when I'm writing, I also read things out loud. But once we get past three characters, it starts to get a little hairy. So it's great to be able to go to a group and just hear the play out loud. And that in itself is so incredibly helpful and such an amazing resource to have for my particular process. But also, it's really great to get feedback as you're writing from a group of people whom you trust. Both of the groups that I have kind of a longer standing um, association with are both groups of artists who I know pretty well, whose work I know well, and that's also been a big part of figuring out like to be able to take pages in and be like, I don't know where I should go, or I don't know how to end this, or does it sound like this, or I'm worried about this, and to be able to get really trusted opinions and advice from other people that I really respect and whose work I admire has also been just invaluable.
Do you want to give a shout out to any of those labs or groups?
Well, I've been a member of the MyE Writers Lab for many, many years. I want to say, oh my gosh, 12? Uh, Good God, 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so the MyE Writers Lab has been tremendous, and just, I mean, they helped me write my first full length play. When I joined the lab, I had only written short plays, and for the first lab fest I was a part of, they were like, "You must write a full length play. Go." So so I really credit them for pushing me. And then I have joined this year. I joined a group out of the Dorset Theatre Festival called Women Artists Working Group, which has also been an incredible boon during this pandemic because we've been meeting on Zoom every week. And again, it's helped me just keep going, especially in this crazy, hazy time, to have a place where I can go and hear my work and get opinions and just hear what it's like also have an audience to see how it lands. It's really been just a lifeline during the pandemic. And most groups that I've been in, and then the other group that I've been a part of, that I was a part of last year was Project Y, which is a year-long group. But again, it exposed me to other writers that I didn't know, and who have since become great friends and colleagues and people whose opinions I really, really trust. So it's just been, for me, it's really important to have that community. I think theater is such a collaborative art form. And so I like the collaboration to start right away.
Throw yourself into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of these, to use your phrase, crazy, hazy times, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. What's it like to be a writer, knowing that production opportunities, at least for a while, may be decreased? How do you maintain your energy and excitement and enthusiasm for writing, for creating plays?
I have to be honest, I really didn't. Right after the show, after Rage Play was canceled, I experienced what I look at now is a deep shock, and just could not write for, I would say, probably the first 6 weeks of the pandemic. I was not writing anything. Then I slowly started writing essays, but it felt really hopeless to me to write theatrically because I was just like, what am I writing for? We have no idea when and how the theater is going to come back. And I already have a backlog of plays that haven't been produced, so why keep writing more that also may not get produced?
Yeah.
So it was really kind of a hard time at the beginning. And again, it's the Dorset Theatre Festival Women Artists Working Group that kind of helped me through. I took a play that I'd already written and started hearing it in chunks, and then was sort of tweaking it, and then got an idea to write a short play, and also have been talking about, and also not just talking about, but seeing work on Zoom and seeing virtual readings, and thinking that, if I knew my play was going to be produced online rather than in person, what would I do differently, and how would I write that play differently? Because I do think most of my plays currently need to be produced. They were written to be experienced live. Like Washer Dryer, there's cooking that happens on stage. And the idea to me was to be able to smell that food cooking while you're sitting in the audience. You can't have that in a Zoom reading, and you lose something really tangible and wonderful, I think, about the play. So I've actually been invited by Mile Square Theater to write something, to write a short play for Zoom. And I've come to realize that it's not theater, but it's not film, and it's not TV. And I don't know what it's going to be called. Like if it's going to be called like Zalay or Zoomlay or who knows. But I'm having fun kind of experimenting with that medium and seeing what can be done with it. So that's where I've started re-energizing myself towards writing. But I have to say, like definitely the first 4 to 6 weeks of the pandemic, I absolutely did not write at all.
Yeah.
I did clean my house.
What's that?
I did clean my house very deep.
So glad. Yeah, we're all glad to hear that. It's very clean from you. I'm really glad that you got over that hump, that shock. I think a lot of writers were sort of knocked for a loop by what happened and what was going to happen. I mean, apart from all the considerations regarding health and safety, just what this meant for our careers. But it gives me hope and cause for delight that you've found a way to move past that, and you're involved with some other writers and friends that can inspire you, and that you're working on new material, which I can't wait to see. So please keep me informed. Keep all of us informed about your upcoming projects. And I wish you the best. It's been a lovely afternoon chatting with you here, and to your continued success. And I will keep my promise that we will be doing another play by Nandita Shenoy at Queen's Theatre as soon as we reopen.
Thank you so much, Rob. I would love nothing more than that. And I truly hope that we can reopen soon, because, as much as Zoom plays are fun, I really miss being with other people in the theater.
In a room. It will happen. Really, the question is when, right? I hope it's soon too. We'll see what happens. Thank you, dear. Have a great afternoon. And till next we meet in person.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.